Jake Morrison wiped the sweat from his forehead as he finished checking the air filters in Section 7 of the spaceship. The maintenance work was boring, but someone had to do it. He pulled his old blue T-shirt away from his chest, where it stuck to his skin. The shirt was faded and worn, with a simple circle design that had 2 lines crossing through it. His grandfather had given it to him years ago, saying it was from some old music festival in the 1960s. The ship's alarm suddenly started blaring. Red lights flashed in the hallway. Jake dropped his tools and ran toward the main deck. Other crew members were running too, their faces full of worry. Captain Lisa Rodriguez was already at the command center when Jake arrived. Her dark hair was pulled back tight, and her jaw was set in a hard line. She was staring at the big screen that showed space around their ship. "What's happening?" Jake asked one of the other engineers. "Unknown ships," the man whispered back. "Lots of them." Jake looked at the screen. At least 20 strange vessels surrounded their exploration ship, the Horizon's Edge. The alien ships were dark and angular, like giant metal insects floating in space. They were much larger than the human ship. "Captain Rodriguez," came a voice from the communications officer. "They're sending a message." "Put it through," the captain said. The screen flickered, then showed a face that made Jake's blood run cold. The creature looked somewhat like a human, but its skin was covered in scales that shifted from green to red. Its eyes were large and yellow, and sharp teeth showed when it spoke. Strange lights under its skin pulsed with different colors. "Human vessel," the alien said in perfect English. "You will surrender immediately. Any resistance will result in your destruction. You have 1 minute to comply." The communication ended. The bridge was silent, except for the hum of the ship's engines. Captain Rodriguez looked around at her crew. "Options? We could try to run," said the pilot, "but they're faster than us. Our weapons are no match for theirs," added the security chief. Jake felt his stomach drop. He had signed up for this mission to explore new worlds, not to be captured by hostile aliens. He thought about his sister back on Earth and wondered if he would ever see her again. "Captain," the communications officer said, "they're powering up their weapons." "Signal our surrender," Captain Rodriguez said quietly. "All hands, prepare to be boarded." The next hour felt like a nightmare. The alien soldiers came onto their ship wearing armor that looked like it was made from black crystal. They moved with military precision, separating the crew and searching every room. Jake found himself pushed into the ship's cafeteria with the other crew members. Armed guards stood at every exit. The aliens were tall, at least 8 feet, and their armor made them look even bigger. The lights under their skin pulsed faster when they were angry or excited. Jake noticed that the patterns were different for each alien, like fingerprints. "What do you think they want?" whispered Dr. Alex Chun, the ship's scientist. "Nothing good," replied Jake. One of the alien guards stepped forward. The lights under his skin were bright orange. "Silence, humans. You will be taken to see Queen Vara Thal. Any who speak without permission will be punished." They were loaded onto a transport ship that looked like the inside of a giant bone. The walls were white and curved, and the floor felt warm under their feet. Jake sat next to Captain Rodriguez, who was trying to look calm, even though Jake could see the worry in her eyes. The journey took about an hour. Through the small windows, Jake could see they were approaching a massive ship. It was shaped like a pyramid, but with smooth, flowing lines. Lights ran along its surface in patterns that reminded him of nerve endings. Inside the alien ship, they were marched through corridors that were both beautiful and terrifying. The walls seemed to be alive, with patterns of light moving through them like blood through veins. Strange symbols were carved into the surfaces, and Jake could hear a low humming sound that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Finally, they arrived at a huge chamber with a high ceiling. The room was filled with alien officials wearing different types of armor and robes. At the far end, on a raised platform, sat a throne made from what looked like twisted metal and glowing crystals. On the throne sat the most impressive alien Jake had ever seen. She was even taller than the soldiers, and her armor was white and gold instead of black. Her skin was a deep blue-green, and the lights under it pulsed in complex patterns of purple and silver. On her head was a crown made from different colored metals, each piece shaped like a small planet. This had to be Queen Vara Thul. The human crew was forced to kneel in front of the throne. Jake's knees hit the cold floor hard, and he winced. He could feel the eyes of dozens of aliens watching them. Queen Vara Thul stood up slowly. When she spoke, her voice was deep and carried easily across the large room. "So," she said, looking down at the humans, "these are the creatures from the small ship. They look weak and soft." Some of the alien officials made sounds that might have been laughter. The queen walked down from her throne, her footsteps echoing in the chamber. She moved like a predator, graceful but dangerous. The lights under her skin were now a steady red color. "You have entered Zephyrian space without permission," she continued. "This is an act of war. Your species will be conquered, and your worlds will become part of our empire." Captain Rodriguez lifted her head. "Your Majesty, we come in peace. We had no idea this was your territory. We're explorers, not soldiers." "Silence!" roared one of the guards. He raised his weapon, but the queen held up a hand to stop him. "Peace?" the queen said, and Jake heard something like amusement in her voice. "Your species knows nothing of peace. We have seen the wars you fight among yourselves. We have watched your cities burn." Jake's heart sank. Somehow, these aliens had been watching Earth. They knew about humanity's violent history. The queen continued, walking among the kneeling humans, studying each one. "We will study your species before we decide how best to conquer your world. Some of you will live to serve the Empire. Others—" She didn't finish the sentence. Jake tried to make himself as small as possible as the queen approached him. He could smell something like cinnamon and metal coming from her. The lights under her skin pulsed brighter as she got closer. Then she stopped. Jake felt her large yellow eyes boring into him. He didn't dare look up, but he could sense her standing directly in front of him. The entire chamber fell silent. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then Jake heard a sharp intake of breath from the queen. The lights under her skin changed from red to purple, so quickly it was like watching lightning. "Impossible," she whispered. Jake risked looking up. The queen was staring at his chest, at his old t-shirt. Her eyes were fixed on the faded peace symbol. What happened next shocked everyone in the room, including Jake. Queen Vara Thul reached up with both hands and lifted the crown from her head. The metal pieces clinked softly as she held it. Then, to the horror of every alien in the chamber, she placed the crown on the floor and knelt down in front of Jake. The room erupted in gasps and shouts. Some of the alien officials stepped forward, but stopped when the queen held up her hand again. Jake stared at the powerful alien queen kneeling in front of him. Her head was bowed, and the lights under her skin were now a soft blue color he hadn't seen before. "Forgive me," she said quietly, her voice completely different from before. "I did not know. I could not have known." Jake looked around at the shocked faces of his crewmates, then back at the queen. "I don't understand," he said. The queen lifted her head, and Jake saw something in her eyes that he never expected to see from such a fierce creature. "Fear and hope. The symbol," she said, pointing at his shirt. "You wear the sacred mark of the peacemakers." Jake stared at the kneeling queen, his mouth hanging open. The entire chamber was silent, except for the soft humming of the ship's systems. He could feel the weight of hundreds of alien eyes watching him, but he couldn't move or speak. The peacemakers? Jake finally managed to say, "I don't know what you're talking about." Queen Varathol slowly stood up, leaving her crown on the floor. The lights under her skin continued to pulse that soft blue color. She looked at Jake with something that might have been wonder. "You truly do not know," she said. "Of course. It has been 3,000 years. One of the alien officials, wearing red and black armor, stepped forward. His skin lights were flashing angry orange. "My queen, this is madness. This creature is trying to trick us. No one has seen the peacemakers for millennia." "General Corax Val," the queen said without looking away from Jake, "you forget yourself. I know the ancient signs better than anyone." The general's lights flashed brighter. "Your Majesty, please. These humans are clearly using our own legends against us. They probably learned about the peacemakers from some conquered species." Queen Varathol finally turned to face the general. When she spoke, her voice was cold and commanding. "Are you questioning my knowledge of our most sacred history?" General Corax Val stepped back, his lights dimming. "No, my queen, but surely you can see how convenient this is. The humans arrive just when we are about to expand our territory, wearing a symbol that looks like our ancient prophecy." "Captain." Rodriguez found her voice. "Your Majesty, we honestly don't know what any of this means. This man is just an engineer. The symbol on his shirt is from an old human festival." The queen looked at Captain Rodriguez with interest. "A festival? What kind of festival?" Jake cleared his throat. "It was my grandfather's shirt. He got it at some music event in the 1960s. It's just a peace symbol. People wore them to show they wanted to end wars." The queen's eyes grew wide. "To end wars," she repeated slowly. "Yes, that is exactly what they promised." She walked back to her throne, but did not sit down. Instead, she pressed her hand against a panel on the wall. The lights in the chamber dimmed, and the air filled with images. Jake gasped as three-dimensional pictures appeared all around them, showing scenes from long ago. 3,000 years ago, the queen began. Our people were young and foolish. We fought constantly. Clan against clan, city against city. Our world was covered in fire and death. The images showed Zephyrian cities burning. Armies of the Tall. Aliens fought with weapons that turned buildings to ash. The scenes were terrible to watch. We were dying, the queen continued. Our entire species was about to destroy itself. Then they came. The images changed. Now Jake could see strange ships arriving at the Zephyrian world. The ships were sleek and silver, unlike anything he had ever seen. From them came figures in white robes. Jake squinted at the images, trying to see the newcomers clearly, but their faces were always hidden or unclear. "The peacemakers," the queen said with reverence. "They appeared just when all hope was lost. They spoke to our leaders. They showed us technologies we had never imagined. Most importantly, they taught us that there was another way to live." The images now showed Zephyrian clans meeting around. Tables instead of battlefields. Cities being rebuilt. Children playing where armies once marched. "They stayed with us for 50 years, the queen said. "They helped us create a government that could keep peace between our people. They shared knowledge that made our lives better. They showed us the stars and taught us how to travel to them." Jake watched, fascinated despite his fear. In the images, he could see Zephyrians working alongside the mysterious robed figures, building machines and learning new ways to live. "But then they left," the queen said, and her voice became sad. "They told us they had to go help other species, other worlds that needed peace. Before they departed, their leader spoke to our council one final time." The images changed to show a great hall filled with Zephyrians. At the center stood a figure in white robes. Though Jake still couldn't see the face clearly, Something about the figure seemed familiar. The peacemaker leader gave us a prophecy, the Queen said. He said that one day people would come from the stars wearing the sacred symbol. When that day arrived, we would be judged. If we had kept the path of peace, we would be welcomed into a great alliance of peaceful species. If we had returned to our old ways of war and conquest, we would face consequences. The images faded, and the chamber lights returned to normal. Queen Varathul looked directly at Jake. The sacred symbol, she said, was described as a circle broken by two lines that meet in the center, a sign of those who choose peace over war. Jake looked down at his shirt. The peace symbol did match that description exactly, but it was just a coincidence, wasn't it? Your Majesty, Captain Rodriguez said carefully, even if our symbols look the same, that doesn't mean we're connected to these peacemakers. Humans have only been traveling in space for a few hundred years. General Corax Val stepped forward again. Exactly. My queen, we have conquered 47 worlds in the name of bringing order to chaos. We have built the greatest empire in this part of the galaxy. We bring peace through strength, just as the peacemakers taught us. Did they teach you that? The Queen asked sharply. Or did we decide that for ourselves? The general's lights flickered uncertainly. We ... We bring stability to worlds torn by conflict. We end their wars by making them part of our empire. By force, said the Queen. When necessary, yes, the general replied. Jake listened to this exchange with growing understanding. The Zephyrians had started as a peaceful people, but over time they had convinced themselves that conquest was a form of peacekeeping. They weren't evil exactly, but they had lost their way. The Queen turned back to Jake. Tell me, human, on your world, do you have wars? Jake hesitated and decided to be honest. Yes, we fight sometimes. But many people try to find peaceful solutions to problems. That's what the peace symbol represents. People who believe fighting should be the last choice, not the first. And those who wear this symbol, the Queen said, what do they do when others make war? They protest. They try to stop the fighting. They help people hurt by wars. They try to find other ways to solve problems. The Queen nodded slowly. Yes, that is what the peacemakers taught us, but we forgot. She looked around the chamber at her officials. We convinced ourselves that our way was the only way to bring peace. We stopped listening to those who disagreed with us. General Corax Vel's lights were flashing orange again. My queen, you cannot seriously believe that this human is some kind of judge sent by the ancient peacemakers. Can I not? The Queen replied, look at the evidence, General. They arrive at the exact moment when we are planning our largest expansion ever. The human wears the exact symbol described in the prophecy. And there is something else. She paused, her own lights shifting to a pattern Jake hadn't seen before. I have been having dreams, the Queen said quietly, for months now. Dreams of a small, soft creature wearing the sacred symbol. In my dreams, this creature asks me questions about our empire, questions I could not answer. The chamber erupted in whispers. Even General Corax Vel looked surprised. Dreams are not prophecy. My queen, he said, but his voice was less certain than before. Perhaps not, the Queen agreed. But coincidences this large are rare. She looked at Jake again. Human, what is your name? Jake Morrison, Your Majesty. Jake Morrison, she repeated, as if testing how the name sounded. I believe you are here for a reason. Whether you know it or not, you may be the one we have been waiting for. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. Waiting for what? The Queen picked up her crown from the floor, but did not put it back on her head. To judge whether the Zephyrian Empire deserves to continue existing. The chamber fell completely silent. Jake could hear his own heartbeat. He was just a maintenance engineer. How could he possibly judge an entire alien civilization? But looking at the Queen's face, he realized she was completely serious. She truly believed that he had the power to decide the fate of her people. And maybe, Jake thought with growing fear, she was right. Jake stood in the guest quarters that Queen Varafil had given him, staring out the window at the stars. 3 days had passed since that first meeting in the throne room, and he still couldn't believe what was happening to him. He was supposed to be fixing air filters, not deciding the fate of an alien empire. Captain Rodriguez sat at the small table nearby, reading reports on a tablet the Zephyrians had given them. The alien technology was amazing, but Jake couldn't focus on that now. His mind was spinning with everything the Queen had told him. "This is insane," Jake said for the 100th time. "I can't judge an entire civilization. I'm just a guy who fixes things on spaceships." "Maybe that's exactly why you can do it," Captain Rodriguez replied. "You don't have any political agenda. You just see things as they are." A soft chime sounded, and the door opened. Queen Varafil entered, but she wasn't wearing her formal armor. Instead, she wore simple robes that were dark blue with silver threads. Without her crown and armor, she looked less frightening and more like a person. "Jake Morrison," she said. "Are you ready to see what we have built?" Jake looked at Captain Rodriguez, who nodded. "I guess so," he said. The Queen led them through the corridors of her ship to a room filled with viewing screens. Dr. Alex Chun was already there with 2 Zephyrian scientists, looking at star maps and data streams. "We have prepared a tour," the Queen said. "You will see several worlds in our empire. Then you can make your judgment with full knowledge." "Your Majesty," Jake said carefully, "I still don't understand why you think I have the right to judge you. The peacemakers left 3,000 years ago. Maybe their prophecy was just a story." The Queen's lights dimmed to a sad purple. "Perhaps. But even if it was only a story, it was a story about what we were supposed to become. Look at what we actually became, and tell me we do not need judgment." General Corax Vel entered the room, his armor gleaming and his lights flashing their usual orange. "My Queen, I must protest this entire process. We are showing our empires secrets to potential enemies." "They are not enemies," the Queen said firmly. "They are guests." "Today they are guests," the general replied. "Tomorrow they may return with an invasion fleet." Jake looked at the general. "We're not conquerors. Humans explore space to learn about other species and find new homes for our people. We don't want to rule anyone." "So you say," General Corax Vel said, "but we have studied your history. Your species has wars just like ours did. You fight over resources, territory, and beliefs." "That's true," Jake admitted. "But we're trying to do better. That's what the peace symbol means. It means we don't have to keep making the same mistakes." The Queen gestured to the viewing screens. "Come, let me show you our first stop." The screens lit up with images of a green and blue planet. Cities covered parts of the surface, connected by silver roads that curved gracefully across continents. Ships moved between the planet and several moons. "This is Kethera Prime," the Queen said. "It was one of the first worlds to join our empire willingly." "Willingly?" Captain Rodriguez asked. "The Ketherans were fighting a civil war that had lasted for decades," the Queen explained. "Millions were dying. When we arrived, both sides asked us to help them make peace." The screen showed scenes from the planet's surface. Jake could see 2 different types of aliens living together in the same cities. One group was tall and thin with feathered skin. The other was shorter and stockier with rough, rocky skin. The Ketherans and the Lithoids had been enemies for generations, the Queen continued. They fought over mining rights and water sources. We helped them create a government where both species could share the planet's resources fairly. Dr. Chung looked up from his data tablet. The planetary production reports show that both species are healthier and more prosperous now than they were before the Zephyrians arrived. Exactly, said General Corax Vel. We brought peace through order. This is what the peacemakers would have wanted. Jake studied the images carefully. The cities did look peaceful and prosperous. Children of both species played together in parks. The planet seemed to be thriving. What about their culture? Jake asked. Did they get to keep their own traditions? The Queen's lights flickered uncertainly. They adapted to imperial standards. Some old customs that caused conflict were discouraged. Discouraged how? Certain festivals that celebrated the old divisions were replaced with imperial holidays. The Queen admitted. Some historical sites that reminded people of past grievances were converted to more useful purposes. Jake felt a chill. You erased parts of their history. We preserved the important parts, General Corax Vel said quickly. The parts that helped them move forward. The screen changed to show another world. This one was mostly desert, with dome-covered cities scattered across the surface. The planet looked harsh but inhabited. Zarian 4, the Queen said. This world was different. They resisted our offer of membership. Jake could see the difference immediately in the images. Military checkpoints stood at the entrances to every city. Zephyrian soldiers patrolled the streets. The local people, who looked like humanoid insects with iridescent shells, moved quickly and kept their heads down when they passed the patrols. How long did they resist? Captain Rodriguez asked. 3 years, the Queen said quietly. The war was difficult for everyone. How many died? Jake asked. The Queen was silent for a long moment. Approximately 2 million Zirians and 50,000 of our soldiers. Jake stared at the screen. 2 million people had died because they didn't want to join the Zephyrian Empire. On the images, he could see memorial walls covered with names in the insect-like script of the Zirians. They were ruled by a military dictator, General Corax Vel said defensively. Their people were oppressed and starving. We liberated them. Did they ask to be liberated? Jake asked. The general's lights flashed brighter orange. Sometimes people must be saved from themselves. Dr. Chun looked up from his tablet again. The resource extraction reports show that Zarian 4 produces rare minerals that are essential for Zephyrian technology. The room fell silent. Jake understood. The Zephyrians had conquered Zarian 4, not just to bring peace, but because they needed the planet's resources. Show me another world, Jake said. The Queen nodded and changed the display again. This time, the planet was covered in vast forests and rivers. Beautiful cities were built into the trees themselves, connected by bridges that spanned kilometers through the canopy. Sylvanos, the Queen said, home to the Verdani people. They are unique. Jake could see why. The aliens in the images looked like walking trees, with bark-like skin and leaves that grew from their heads and arms. They lived in harmony with their forest world, their cities designed to support the ecosystem rather than replace it. The Verdani have been part of our empire for only 5 years, the Queen continued. They joined us to gain protection from the Scoran Raiders. Who are the Scoran Raiders? Captain Rodriguez asked. Pirates and slavers from outside our territory, General Corax Vel explained. They were attacking Verdani settlements and stealing their people. We offered protection in exchange for membership in the Empire. Jake watched the images of the tree-like aliens going about their daily lives. They seemed peaceful, but he noticed something troubling. Large areas of forest had been cleared, and industrial buildings stood where the trees once grew. What are those facilities? He asked. Medical research centers, the Queen said. The Verdani have natural abilities to heal injuries and cure diseases. We are studying these abilities to help all species in the Empire. Did the Verdani agree to this research? The Queen's lights dimmed. They ... Understand it is for the greater good. Dr. Chun frowned at his tablet. The medical reports show that many Verdani are being held in the research facilities for extended periods. Some have been there for over a year. Jake felt sick. The Zephyrians were experimenting on the Verdani, probably against their will. They had saved the tree people from raiders only to turn them into test subjects. Your Majesty, Jake said carefully, I think I'm starting to understand the problem. The Queen looked at him with hope and fear in her large eyes. What do you see? You want to help people, Jake said. But you've convinced yourselves that you know what's best for everyone. You don't ask what they want. You just decide for them. General Corax Vel stepped forward angrily. We have brought peace to 47 worlds. We have ended wars, stopped famines, and created prosperity across this entire sector of space. By force, Jake replied, and by taking away people's right to choose their own future. Choice, the general scoffed. What about the choice to live in peace instead of war? What about the choice to have enough food and medicine? We provide these things, but at what cost? Jake asked. The Catharins lost their history. The Zirians lost millions of their people. The Verdani are being experimented on. You're not giving them peace. You're giving them your version of peace. The Queen was very quiet, her lights cycling through different colors as she thought. Finally, she spoke. What would you have us do? Jake Morrison? Should we have left the Catharins to kill each other? Should we have let the Scoran raiders destroy the Verdani? Should we stand by and watch suffering when we have the power to stop it? Jake sat alone in his quarters, staring at his old t-shirt. He had washed it in the Zephyrian cleaning system, and the peace symbol seemed brighter now against the faded blue fabric. 3 weeks had passed since he first arrived on the Queen's ship, and he still felt lost. A soft knock came at his door. Come in, he called. Dr. Alex Chun entered, carrying his tablet and wearing an excited expression. Jake, I think I've found something important. What is it? Dr. Chun sat down at the table and activated his tablet. A holographic display appeared above it, showing complex data streams and star charts. I've been analyzing the Zephyrian historical records about the peacemakers. There are things that don't add up. Jake leaned forward. What kind of things? Look at this, Dr. Chun said, pointing to a section of data. The peacemakers arrived at Zephyr Prime exactly 3,047 years ago. Their ships used a type of energy signature that the Zephyrians couldn't identify. So I ran that energy signature through our database of human historical records. Dr. Chun's eyes were bright with discovery. Jake, we have records of ships with identical energy signatures leaving Earth 3,000 years ago. Jake felt his heart skip a beat. That's impossible. Humans weren't traveling in space 3,000 years ago. That's what we thought, Dr. Chun said. But what if we were wrong? What if there was an earlier human civilization that achieved space travel long before our current one? The door chimed again, and Captain Rodriguez entered with Queen Varathul. The Queen looked tired. Her skin lights dimmed to a soft blue. Dr. Chun, the Queen said, I hope you have good news. The situation is becoming difficult. What's happening? Jake asked. Captain Rodriguez answered. General Corax Vel is gathering support among the fleet commanders. He's telling them that the Queen has been compromised by human influence. Many of my people believe the general is right, the Queen added sadly. They think I have become weak by listening to you. Some ships have already left the fleet to return to their home bases. Dr. Chun cleared his throat. Your Majesty, I may have information that could help. I believe the peacemakers were actually early humans. The Queen's lights flashed bright purple with surprise. Humans? But that would mean Jake really is connected to them. Captain Rodriguez finished. Not because of some cosmic prophecy, but because he's part of the same species that helped your people 3,000 years ago. Jake stared at Dr. Chun. Are you sure about this? The energy signatures match perfectly, Dr. Chun said. And there's more. I found records of archaeological sites on 17 different worlds that show signs of the same technology. All of them are described as being built by ancient benefactors who taught local species about peace and cooperation. 17 worlds. The Queen whispered. The peacemakers visited 17 worlds that we know of. What happened to them? Jake asked. If they were human, where did they go? Dr. Chun's expression became grim. I think they were destroyed. All of the archaeological sites show signs of a massive conflict. Something attacked them about 2,000 years ago. The Queen was quiet for a long moment, her lights cycling through different colors. Finally, she spoke. There are legends among our people about the Great Darkness, a time when the stars themselves seemed to go out. We always thought they were just stories. What do the legends say? Captain Rodriguez asked. That something came from the center of the galaxy, something that hated peace and wanted only destruction. The legends say it consumed entire civilizations, leaving nothing behind but empty worlds. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. And you think this thing destroyed the original humans? It would explain why the peacemakers never returned, Dr. Chun said. They weren't abandoning the species they helped. They were fighting for their survival. A loud alarm suddenly rang through the ship. The lights in the room flashed red, and an announcement came over the communication system in the Zephian language. The Queen's lights turned bright orange with alarm. General Corax Val has taken control of the military ships. He's demanding that I hand you over to him for execution. Execution? Jake's voice cracked. He believes you are here to weaken our empire before a human invasion, the Queen explained. He thinks the peace symbol is a trick to make us lower our defenses. Captain Rodriguez stood up. We need to get back to our ship. No, the Queen said firmly. The general has surrounded the horizon's edge with armed vessels. If you try to leave, he will destroy you. Jake looked out the window and could see other Zephyrian ships moving into attack positions. Their weapons were powered up and ready to fire. Your Majesty, came a voice from the communication system. This is General Corax Vel. You have 1 hour to surrender the humans to us, or we will take them by force. The Queen walked to the communication panel and pressed a button. General, I am still your Queen. Stand down immediately. You were my Queen, came the reply. But you have been corrupted by these aliens. The Council of Admirals has voted. I am now the military commander of this fleet. The communication ended. The Queen's lights dimmed to a sad purple. I'm sorry, she said to Jake. I have failed you just as we failed the original peacemakers. Jake stood up and walked to the window. Outside, he could see dozens of Zephyrian warships positioning themselves around the Queen's vessel. It looked hopeless. But then he remembered something his grandfather had told him years ago. When he gave Jake the old t-shirt, his grandfather had been a soldier in Vietnam, but later became a peace activist. He used to say that the hardest battles were not fought with weapons, but with ideas. Your Majesty, Jake said slowly, you said that some of your people have left the fleet? Yes, about half of our ships have departed. They want no part in a civil war. And the ones that stayed with General Corax Vel? They believe in the old ways. They think strength and conquest are the only paths to peace. Jake nodded, an idea forming in his mind. What if we showed them another path? What do you mean? The Queen asked. Jake turned away from the window and looked at her. The general thinks I'm here to judge your people and find them guilty. But what if that's not what the peacemakers intended? Dr. Chun looked up from his tablet. What are you thinking? The original humans didn't give up when they faced the Great Darkness, Jake said. They fought to protect the species they had helped. Maybe that's what the prophecy really meant. Maybe I'm not here to judge the Zephyrians. Maybe I'm here to help them. Captain Rodriguez frowned. Help them how? By showing them that there's a difference between bringing peace and forcing peace, Jake replied. The peacemakers taught your people that peace was possible, but they let the Zephyrians choose their own path. That's what made it work. The Queen's lights began to brighten. You mean we should give the conquered worlds a choice? Yes, Jake said. Not just the choice to obey or be destroyed, but the real choice to decide their own future. The general will never agree to that, the Queen said. He believes that freedom leads to chaos. Then we'll have to prove him wrong, Jake replied. Dr. Chun stood up excitedly. Jake, if you're right about this, then the peace symbol isn't just a sign of judgment. It's a sign of hope. Hope for what? The Queen asked. Jake looked at his reflection in the window, seeing the peace symbol on his shirt. Hope that we can finish what the peacemakers started. Hope that we can build a galaxy where species choose to work together instead of being forced to. The communication system crackled to life again. My Queen, your time is running out. Surrender. The humans now. Jake walked to the communication panel. General Koragsfell, this is Jake Morrison. I'd like to speak with you. There was a long pause. Then the general's voice came through, filled with anger. Human, you have 30 minutes to prepare for your execution. I don't want to fight you, Jake said calmly. I want to help you. Help? You? You are here to judge us and find us wanting. No, Jake replied. I'm here to help you become what the peacemakers always hoped you could be. Not conquerors who force peace on others, but teachers who show others that peace is possible. Another long pause. When the general spoke again, his voice was uncertain. What are you talking about? I'm talking about giving your subject worlds a choice, Jake said. Real freedom to decide their own path. Some might choose to stay in your empire. Others might choose independence. But they would choose. That is chaos, the general snapped. That is the return of war and suffering. Maybe, Jake admitted. But it's also the only way to create lasting peace. Peace that people choose is stronger than peace that's forced on them. The Queen stepped forward and pressed the communication button. General, I want to try the humans' way. Give me the chance to prove that freedom can work. There was silence for several minutes. Jake could feel his heart pounding as he waited for the general's response. Finally, the general's voice came through the speakers. You have one chance, my Queen. If this fails, if chaos returns to our empire, then I will do what must be done to restore order. Jake felt relief wash over him, but he knew this was only the beginning. Now they had to prove that freedom and peace could work together. The fate of billions of people across dozens of worlds depended on whether they could succeed where even the ancient peacemakers had struggled. 6 months later, Jake stood on the bridge of the horizon's edge, watching through the main screen as representatives from 23 different worlds gathered in space near the neutral zone. Ships of all shapes and sizes floated together. Some sleek and silver, others rough and industrial, all waiting for the historic meeting to begin. Are you nervous? Captain Rodriguez asked. Joining him at the viewing window, Jake touched the peace symbol on his shirt, which had become famous across dozens of worlds. Terrified, he admitted, but hopeful too. The past months had been the hardest of his life. True to her word, Queen Varathul had offered every world in the Zephyrian Empire a choice. Remain part of the Empire with new freedoms and representation. Become independent allies or leave entirely. The results had surprised everyone. Dr. Chun approached with his tablet full of data. The final numbers are in. 18 worlds chose to stay in the Empire under the new constitution. 12 chose independence, but signed alliance agreements. Only 3 worlds chose complete separation. And the 3 that left? Jake asked. 2 of them have already contacted us asking to rejoin the alliance, Captain Rodriguez said with a smile. Turns out governing yourself is harder than they expected. The communication system crackled to life. All ships, this is Admiral Lisa Rodriguez of the human vessel Horizon's Edge. The first Galactic Peace Conference will now begin. Jake still couldn't get used to hearing Captain Rodriguez called Admiral. When news of the alliance had reached Earth, the human government had immediately promoted her and sent a full diplomatic fleet to support the peace process. Queen Vara Thol's voice came through the speakers next. Representatives of all worlds, welcome to this gathering. Today, we begin something new. Not an empire built on conquest, but a community built on choice. Through the viewing screen, Jake could see the massive conference station that had been built for this meeting. It was a joint project, with each species contributing their best technology and knowledge. The Ketherans had provided the environmental systems. The Verdani had grown living walls that purified the air. And humans had designed the communication networks that let everyone speak in their own languages. Jake Morrison, please report to Conference Room 1, came an announcement. Jake took a deep breath. This was it. The moment he had been preparing for, since that first day when the Queen had knelt before him. He made his way through the station corridors, passing representatives from species he was still learning about. Some looked like walking crystals, others like floating gas clouds with eyes. The diversity was amazing, but what struck him most was how they all seemed to be talking together peacefully. Conference Room 1 was enormous, with a circular table that could seat hundreds. At the center was a holographic display showing a 3-dimensional map of the galaxy. Red areas showed regions still controlled by hostile forces, while blue areas marked the growing alliance of peaceful worlds. General Corax Vel was all ready, seated at the table, wearing new armor that was silver instead of black. Next to him sat the Verdani representative, a tree-like being whose leaves rustled softly as she spoke. Across from them were the Ketheran delegates, their feathers bright. With excitement, Queen Vara Thol entered and took her seat. She no longer wore a crown, having replaced it with a simple circlet that represented her role as an elected leader rather than an absolute ruler. Friends, the Queen said, we gather today to address the greatest challenge our alliance faces, the return of the Great Darkness. Jake felt a chill as the holographic display changed to show the galactic center. Dark spots were spreading outward from the core, marking star systems that had gone silent in recent months. Dr. Chun stood up to address the group. Our long-range sensors have detected massive fleets moving out from the galactic center. Based on the ancient records, we believe this is the same force that destroyed the original Peacemaker civilization. An alien that looked like a giant mantis clicked its mandibles nervously. How do we fight something that destroyed beings more advanced than us? We don't fight it, Jake said, standing up. We do something the ancient peacemakers couldn't do. All eyes turned to him. Jake still felt strange being the center of attention, but he had learned to live with it. The peacemakers were alone when the Great Darkness came, he continued. They tried to protect dozens of worlds, but they were spread too thin. We're not alone. We have an alliance. General Corax Vel leaned forward. You suggest we face this threat together? Not just face it, Jake replied. Transform it. The Great Darkness spreads because it feeds on conflict and hatred. What if we offered it something else? The Verdani representative's leaves rustled with interest. What do you mean? Jake walked to the holographic display and pointed to the advancing dark fleets. Every species that joins our alliance becomes stronger and more peaceful. What if these dark forces aren't evil? What if they're just lost and angry, like the Zephyrians were before the peacemakers helped them. Queen Varathol's lights shifted to bright purple with excitement. You want to offer them peace instead of war? I want to offer them choice, Jake said. The same choice we offered everyone else. General Corax Vel stood up, his lights flashing orange. Human, this is madness. These forces have destroyed entire civilizations. They cannot be reasoned with. Maybe not, Jake admitted. But we have to try. If we just fight them, we become the same thing they are. We become conquerors trying to force our will on others. A new voice entered the conversation. It was Admiral Sarah Kim from the Human Diplomatic Fleet. Jake raises an interesting point. Our psychological analysis suggests that aggressive civilizations often act out of fear and desperation. What if the Great Darkness is afraid of something? Dr. Chun activated his tablet and shared new data with the holographic display. We've been analyzing the pattern of their advance. They're not just destroying worlds randomly. They're targeting planets with high levels of cooperation and peace. They're afraid of unity, the Verdani representative said softly. They're trying to stop what we're building. Jake nodded. Which means what we're building is working. The Alliance is exactly what the galaxy needs. General Corax Vel sat back down, his lights dimming to a thoughtful yellow. Even if you are right, how do we communicate with forces that destroy everything? They encounter? The same way Queen Varathol communicated with me, Jake said. With symbols. With gestures of peace that they can't ignore. Over the next several hours, the representatives worked together to design a plan. It was risky and might not work, but it was better than another galactic war. 3 weeks later, Jake stood on the bridge of a specially modified ship at the edge of the Alliance territory. Behind them floated the largest peaceful fleet ever assembled, with ships from every member world. But their weapons were powered down, and they broadcast continuous messages of peace in hundreds of languages. At the front of the fleet was Jake's ship, painted bright white, with the peace symbol displayed prominently on its hull. As the dark fleets approached, Jake sent out a simple message. We are the children of the peacemakers. We offer you the same choice we have offered all worlds. Join us in peace, remain independent as friends, or leave us in peace. We will not attack you unless you attack us first. For hours, nothing happened. The dark fleets continued their approach, weapons charging for battle. Then something unexpected occurred. One ship broke away from the dark fleet and approached the Alliance vessels. It was massive and black, with spikes and armor that made it look like a weapon itself. The communication system crackled with a voice that sounded like grinding metal. Peacemakers, extinct, destroyed, cycles ago, We are their descendants, Jake replied calmly. We carry on their work. Impossible. Peace, weakness, leads to doth. Peace led to this, Jake said, gesturing to the diverse fleet. Around him, hundreds of worlds working together. Former enemies, now friends. Strength through cooperation, not domination. There was a long silence, and more ships began breaking away from the dark fleet, approaching slowly. The voice came again, but this time it sounded different. Less angry, more curious. Show us. This peace, How does it work? Over the following months, the process was slow and difficult. The beings of the Great Darkness had been fighting for so long, they had forgotten how to do anything else. But gradually, some of them chose to try peace. Others chose to return to the galactic center and leave the Alliance alone. A few chose to keep fighting, but they found themselves isolated and outnumbered. Jake returned to Earth a year later, but not for long. The galaxy was full of species that needed help learning to live together peacefully. The work the ancient peacemakers had started was far from finished. He stood in his apartment, looking at the framed peace symbol that had started it all. His grandfather's old T-shirt was now in a museum, but the symbol lived on. It flew on flags across hundreds of worlds, reminding everyone that peace was always a choice. His communicator chimed. It was Queen Vara Thul, calling from the Alliance capital. "Jake Morrison," she said, her lights bright with happiness. "We have received a request for help from the Andromeda Galaxy. 3 species there are locked in a terrible war. Will you come?"